people will say, I believe and I have consciousness because I do. I know I have consciousness because I have it. But actually, if you believe it and quote unquote know it and insist on it, it's because somewhere in your brain is information that's telling your higher cognition that you have it. So there's a bundle of information that is essentially a description of what consciousness is and is telling you that you have it. It's information. And those bundles of information are never accurate. They're always simplified. So now we have an interesting case because maybe you do have something that is sort of similar to consciousness, but it's not going to be what you think you have. Just like the apple in the real world is not the apple that you think is there.
Is another assumption here possibly that consciousness is at a higher level than everything that's going on in the brain, and that these two things aren't ever, I guess, simultaneous or at the same level?
Well, I don't think I make that assumption. There may be people who do, but I don't think that's a component here. There's a very, very, I don't think so. So there's essentially at the heart of almost all philosophy of consciousness, almost all of it, there's a claim, there's a line of reasoning, which is circular actually. And it goes like this. I know the experience is there because I'm experiencing it, right? I know it's real. I know it's there because I'm experiencing it. Okay. And that seems very powerful to people. But the problem is it's circular, because what you're saying is, I know A is true because A is true. Right? You're putting forward experienceness as evidence for experienceness. You're saying, I know experienceness is true because experienceness is true. It's a circle, and indicative of a basically a computing machine that's stuck in a processing loop. Right? So what's the solution to it? The solution to it is exactly what I've been talking about. You quote unquote know. You believe that you have experience because there's information in your brain that tells you that you do. It's the only way that can happen. It's the only way you know anything at all ever, because there's information in your brain that tells you that you have it. Why does your brain have that information? For the same reason the brain builds any bundle of information, because it's useful. It's probably a useful but very inexact simplified description of something else, right? So now we have a very simple account of the thing. There's something. We don't know yet. We don't have to worry yet about what it is. I mean, I think we have good ideas for it, but there's something that the brain is building a model of, and that model then leads you to claim to have an essentially magical property inside of you. And I would say that's the same thing as color. We talked about color. You look around and you say, there's red, there's green. I know it's there. Well, actually, there isn't red or green, but there is something. There's something way more complicated and way more physically specific, this mixture of wavelengths. And then the brain builds a simplified model of it. And then your cognition gets hold of that model. And then you claim that this is absolutely true. And this is as far as I'm concerned, the only logical explanation for this consciousness stuff is that there's something there that's really complicated and specific and physical and understandable at some level, probably. Then the brain builds a simplified model of it that's highly simplified and inexact. And then your cognition gets hold of that simplified model. And then you claim, it's absolutely true. I have a magic essence inside of my head. And that's the process that's going on there.
So just to try to clarify for my own understanding again before we move on, I mentioned earlier, I think, this property of model-based knowledge that underlies all of the stuff that I think we're going to be talking about. So it's the idea that everything we know stems from, so my dog being brown. I say that my dog is brown because my brain is modeling the dog, and then my consciousness, my cognition gets hold of that, as you put it, and then says, okay, I know that my dog is brown. And then consciousness is just one specific example of this. My brain is modeling something, it gets hold of my cognition gets hold of it, and then I say, I know that I'm conscious. I know that I'm aware.
Yeah, you have a subjective experience. That's what you're saying to yourself. And that's based on some self-description, some model of your internal processes.